What I like about a redwood forest is you can feel it, you can hear it, you can smell it, and you can sense it, and you just feel like you're all by yourself in this wonderful womb of the mother. I mean, it's just the most amazing thing to be in, especially if you can find a circle of redwoods.
Oh yes, it's a full sensory experience. You know, to be able to experience it on a physical level, experience it on an energetic level, experience it on a spiritual level, because there is body, mind, and spirit in our connection to nature. Anybody else? How about you?
I have two. One is when I see little weeds growing through the cracks of the pavement.
Cool.
Because it's like, ha, you're fighting back. And then my other one is, even though I really don't like mushrooms, I think they're kind of gross, I really like seeing like little fairy rings in the middle of like downtown.
Yeah.
It's like, ha, you're still around. I see you.
Even in the heart of what is man-made, nature always finds a way. It was from one of the Jurassic Park movies. They said nature always finds a way. And there's a program that talks about life after people.
Yes.
And in every single scenario, ultimately, it goes back to this beautiful natural setting that you would never know mankind was at. Yet it's lush and it's green and it's alive. And, you know, we're a part of that. We don't have to be separate from the world around us. It was, you know, some people say that, well, you know, we are stewards of the earth. We are the ones here to take care of it, which, I mean, to a certain degree, I think that's true. I also have a different viewpoint. What can live without the other? Can the earth be just fine without us?
Yep.
Can we be just fine without the earth?
No.
Nope. Well, in spirit we can, but
well, in
in
spirit we
form.
can. Physically, it might get tough.
it
No, I
will
would
be
argue
tough.
that in spirit, maybe not.
Yeah, even then.
But that's a whole other philosophical debate that's not for today.
Well, that's the talk you're going to lead. So the
Put them
idea...
down on the schedule.
Yeah. So the idea that we are in this amazing, wonderful environment that we have a symbiotic relationship with. We are a part of it, so therefore, we're the stewards of ourselves. The earth is there to take care of us and be taken care of by us. It is our friend that occasionally needs a little help with something. And we provide it, we help it. And yet, at the same time, it says, okay, I got this. Eventually, I will reroute a river. I don't care if it doesn't work for you. I'm going to reroute this. But it's like, well, okay. When I was in the Amazon, one of the phenomena that happens in the village is periodically ants will march through the village. And if anybody has ever studied what the ants do, and they just take out everything in their path. They can strip a full cow down to its bones in a matter of hours. There are millions of them, and nothing can stop them. And so as I was in the village, fortunately, it was not the time of the year that happens, although, you could see them. I said, well, what do you do? They said, well, we leave.
Yeah.
They know that there's nothing they can do to stop it, and there's nothing they want to do. Because after the ants go through and they come back to the village, everything is clean. One of the problems is things like tarantulas and snakes may get up underneath, the homes. There isn't a single thing. There isn't a speck of food. There isn't a speck of dust. It is as if the ants came and cleared everything.
Well, do they eat the homes too, or do they just clean
them? No, they just clean them.
Oh.
Everything.
Well, no.
Yeah, they don't do dishes, but they will go over the dishes, and if there's any scrap of food on it, they'll take it.
Wow.
But the villagers recognize that that's what nature does. You can either try to resist nature, or you can find harmony with it. Now, how do we find harmony with it? By finding harmony within ourselves. By accepting that fire, water, earth, and air exists within each and every one of us. What is the regulation of our temperature but fire? Right. The minerals, iron, calcium, all of that That's earth. Air allows us to breathe, allows us to do everything that we want to do. And if we don't have it, things go badly, quickly. And water. We were born and created in water. Water is what we mostly are. When you can take a look at yourself as just a collection of natural elements, it's a lot easier to be able to go, okay, I can surrender a little bit of my humanity, a little bit of my separateness. I can say, for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to be a stone. I'm going to consider the stone inside of me, my bones, my teeth. The elements inside of me that resonate with the stone people. In the Native American tradition, they're often referred to as the stone people. And to be able to connect with the stone people within you, all it takes is being able to realize that you already have stone in you. So it's connecting to that part of yourself, and then once you get that, then you connect to that within something else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be passing around, these guys out, I'm going to be passing around a bowl that has stones in it. And you can take one. This is kind of heavy. Can you help her with that?
I've got it.
And just kind of go through the bowl and pick one. Find a stone that you think is cool looking or that kind of feels good in your hand. Or maybe one that talks to you. For whatever, however you would choose it, go ahead and choose a stone. And we're going to be doing something with those stones later. And understand this is a stone that you already have a contract with, so you will be leaving with it. And I've done this type of demonstration for many years now. Not once have two people ever gone after the same stone. They may have thought the same, the two people may have thought a stone was cool, but for some reason one person will go, but it's not mine. These are an extension of the stone within you. So you guys will be able to connect to that particular stone. So we also have water, which is amazing and wonderful, and it nurtures us. We are alive because of it. Our bodies will almost immediately begin to sustain damage through the prolonged lack of it. And yet, it's really surprising how many people just, they have a really unusual relationship with water, as I've noticed. Either there's too much rain or too little rain. There is, the idea of, don't go near the water because you can't trust it. Because I had somebody tell me it's, there's a general theory that you never turn your back on the ocean.
Yeah.
Which there is wisdom in that. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that there's wisdom? Because
you have those waves that come up and take you away.
Yeah, the waves can take you away. The undertow can take you away. And, when we consider, many of us have had situations where maybe we had a drowning scare. Maybe we almost drowned. Did anybody here almost drown?
Sure.
Yeah, or even if you're drinking a bunch of water and you start choking on it.
Sure.
Immediately there becomes this relationship, okay, there's something wrong with water. Water is out to get me. Actually, I had somebody tell me that. Water is out to get me. Screw the ocean. Screw the water. It's only waiting to sneak up on me. And, and he had a very scary experience with water. And, and it used to be a common thing when people were trying to teach their kids to swim. Well, just toss them in and they'll figure it out. And
survival does things.
Yeah, survival does amazing things. But it also creates fear. It creates a story. How many people have a story about an aspect of nature? Yes.
Well, I've almost drowned 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out today that somebody important to me drowned this weekend.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's brand new.
Yeah,
So
I'm very sorry.
Really, yeah.
So, yeah, it can be very powerful because there's light and shadow in everything. Is the water the cause of it? Well, it's there, but there's no ill intent. There's no instinct for it. Nature is nature. It's neither good or bad. A rainbow is no more good than a tsunami is bad. They're simply natural events. There's nothing personal. And yet it's hard not to build up a story. As my friend who was completely opposed to anything water-ish. You know, he refused to take baths. It's like showers were barely what he could tolerate. And he said it wasn't fear, it was hatred.
Ooh.
And when, you know, when we would talk, and, you know, and he'd say, it's like, well, I said, but you understand you're 70% water. And he goes, yeah. He goes, and if I could do something to change that, I would. And so we had an interesting conversation about that. It's like, how do you feel about yourself? What is your connection? He felt totally separate from the world around him because there's so much water in the world around him. Yet he didn't make that connection until we started talking about, it's like, well, there's, you know, the planet is mostly water, you're mostly water, you know, it must be really hard for you to feel like you fit in. And he said, you know, people talk about going to the beach and talk about how relaxing it is. He said, I find nothing relaxing about it. I said, well, you considered moving to the desert? He said, yes.
Wow.
I said, well, but you know there's rain there too. And there's water there, it's just you can't see it. So I spent a lot of time talking with him, a lot of time working with him. And ultimately he realized that the water was not personally against him. He had actually created a story where the water was, it had something out against him personally. And so we sat, and I just put a glass of water in front of him. And we sat there with that glass of water for the longest time, and he just stared at it. And I said, okay, move the glass closer to you. And at first he wouldn't, and then he did. I got him to place his fingers in it and rub his fingers together. I said, is it hurting you? He said, no. I said, is it doing anything to you? No. I said, well, why don't you, will you drink the water? And he said, well, yeah. So he drank the water. I said, how does that feel? And he goes, well, you know, I feel a little better. I feel refreshed. And I said, so water can be good? So we had to go through this whole process of him slowly learning to trust water. Ultimately, he was able to at least decide that it wasn't out after him. It wasn't out to get him. And, you know, because there were so many layers to this. And like nature, things take time. The Grand Canyon didn't form in a minute, and it formed from water. But it took a very long time. When somebody has anything deeply ingrained in them, it takes a long time. If they feel totally disconnected from the natural world, that the natural world is just a place waiting to hurt them and we're only safe inside houses, that cuts a whole lot out of your life. It disconnects from a part of yourself that's already connected to it. You know, fire. I was in a Native American church ceremony with a young woman, and one of the elements is that there's a huge fire right at the center of it. And this young woman had attended Native American church. She loved Native American church. She loved sweat lodges. She loved tending fire. She had a deep, you know, wonderful relationship with fire until her trailer caught fire. She woke up, it was filled with smoke. She was running, and in her confusion, she ran into the heart of the fire. She heard her child screaming. Her child was very badly burned. Her husband was trying to be able to get to them. And it took a very long time for her to physically heal. And when she came back, she was heartbroken because her relationship with fire had been completely disrupted. It was something that was a cause of pain. It was something that tried to take her daughter from her. And it became a very intense and painful thing for her to have to deal with the separation from something that on one hand she had always loved, and in the other hand had damaged her. And so she came into ceremony, and she went up and she knelt right in front of that big huge fire. And she wept, and she said, why? Why did you do this? And she spent the whole evening with us holding her in prayer. And she stood and she yelled at that. She cried. She railed at it until she was empty. And then she just laid there in front of it. She curled up and she laid there in front of it. And she found her peace. She went into a sweat lodge surrounded by heat. in the dark, steam. And she faced that because she would not give up her connection with what was a fundamental part of her, what she knew. She knew fire was a part of her. Air is fun. Air is... I had a wonderful experience with air. In 1 year, it suddenly came to me, guess what? You're going to be tested in all of the elements. And I thought, really? And it's like, yeah. And over that next year, I had opportunities come to me that challenged me in each of the elements. I went to a sweat lodge, and it turned out the fire tender didn't show up. So I had to tend fire. I had no equipment. I had no gloves. And we were burning manzanita, which burns hot. And I was out there by myself, tending fire for the first time alone. And I spoke to grandfather, and you know, for those of you who are not a part of Native tradition, you refer to grandfather as fire, or fire as grandfather. And it's like, grandfather, you're going to have to help me. I know you need to burn hot in order to do what you need to do to take care of the people inside. And I have to handle you without the equipment that I normally would have. And I felt this connection, and it just said, breathe. And so when I needed to move a log, I'd take a breath, and as I exhaled, I'd reach in, take the log, move it. I was told, work slowly, don't rush. Be at peace, you won't get burned. And I worked that entire sweat lodge and never once got burned. And the whole time, the more I did it, the more the heat, I couldn't feel the difference between the heat in my skin. And it just became a breath and moving. And it was amazing. And I loved it. And my test in air was, I was sitting down and, you know, on my computer, and all of a sudden, you're going to jump out of a plane. Excuse me? What was that? I must have heard you wrong. Oh, no, you didn't. You're going to jump out of a plane. Really?
Why?
Fling myself out of a perfectly functioning aircraft. So I found myself looking, it's like, okay, I can go there. Oh, look, I can get a Groupon to plummet to my death. Great! I can plummet to my death for less. Wow! But I trusted. That was my test in air. So with my youngest son, I didn't tell anybody about it until, actually most people I didn't tell till afterwards. Whereupon in Facebook, they're like, you just did what? I told my sons that day that their mother was going to jump out of a plane. My oldest son looked at me and said, this is a spirit thing, isn't it? And it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, God. Which was a lot for him because he's an atheist. So my youngest son, who is a pilot, he wanted to go with me. So he went with me, and he got to sit in the co-pilot's seat.
Cool.
Which he got one of these old, like, World War II parachutes that hang down behind you. And, you know, the pilot looked at him, and, you know, so they talked because, you know, Jeremy had like 10 hours towards his license. And so the pilot goes, well, okay, here's your training. If I tell you jump out that little door. Count to 10, pull the rope, we'll find you. End of training. So that was his. And I was strapped to a perfectly nice young man. You know, they don't let you jump out by yourself. It's tandem jumps. And I'm hoping it's like, okay, it's like, oh, you're loving life, right? Not thinking about anything bad, feeling good. You know, didn't have a fight with your girlfriend. He looks at me. So here I am, strapped to someone, and we go up 15,000 feet. And the little door part is just open. And he says, well, I got to lean out because it was raining. So we actually had to get above the cloud line. So he leans out to take a look. I'm hooked to him. Here I am. Oh, that's a lot of air. That's a lot of air. So, you know, we were sitting there, and, you know, we reached the point, and it's like, okay, everybody, you know, we're going to go. And I was first in line. My son said it was a fascinating experience to turn around, look, and see his mother roll out of a plane. And we rolled out. And as he kind of rolled back so I could see the plane going away, I'm thinking to myself, oh God, I hope this isn't a bad idea.
It's a little late for that.
Yeah, a little late for that one. And then we rolled, and I'm just looking down, and I'm surrounded. We were still in the cloud. So it's just cold. Immediately, the cold made everything numb. I didn't feel my body. And all of a sudden, I was falling, and bam, the clouds part, and I see the earth. I had never seen the earth from that perspective. And you're just there. And it's, other than the rushing of the wind, you can't really hear anything. And my partner, he's tapping me on the shoulder. And, you know, he kind of puts his hand in front of me and goes like this. And so I go like this. Later on, he explained that in all the time he's done this, he's never had someone do that and not make a sound. So he thought I fainted.
Oh.
But I was experiencing air. It was all around me, and I didn't feel any difference between me and it. And then it was raining. We were falling at the rate of the raindrops, and I realized I was looking at the earth through the eyes of a raindrop. That's what the earth looks like to a raindrop falling. And as the earth got closer and closer and closer, and suddenly the chute opens, and we kind of go up, and then we're just floating above it. But that sensation, before that chute opened, there was no fear. I couldn't really separate myself from the air around me. It was like, in a way, I felt nothing and everything. And that was my test in air. My test in water was, some of you may have heard of Watsu.
Mm-hmm.
Watsu is probably one of the best things to ever hit this planet. It's a massage inside of a pool that is heated up to body temperature. It has a high mineral content, so you kind of float. And the person takes you and they stretch your body slowly. And they may hold onto your head and just start going like this, and your whole body just starts to snake back and forth. And it's just floating. And it's amazing and it's wonderful. And when I experienced it, it was up at a place called Harbin Hot Springs. And there was, which is clothing optional, and most people don't choose that option, which was a whole new thing for me to experience. But there was a freedom there. And being there and accepting not only the bodies around me, but my own body, that it really didn't mean anything. And being in the water, it was just wonderful. And so a woman, I did a chiropractic adjustment, and she said, well, let me give you a Watsu treatment. So we're up at, early in the morning, the sun was just coming out, and it's this beautiful little heart-shaped pool, and it's filled with mineral water that's nice and warm. And she explained that at first, I had the little nose plug, and she explained that she would just be moving me through the water. That was level 1. And, most people just go with level 1. She said level 2 was where I went underwater. But you don't hold your breath. They watch, and they see you, how you breathe, and you're supposed to just breathe in and out. And then at the height of your inhale, they take you underwater, and you just let the air out slowly. They move you, and then just as that air ends, they bring you up just so that your face comes up above the water. The first time she did this, it was like, okay, this is a little weird. But after that, there was something very amazing that happened. When I let go of the fact, my doctor's mind kicked in. It's like, okay, first off, you've got more air in your lungs than what you normally breathe. You've got a reserve in there. 2, this woman is not going to stand here and hold you underwater till you die. She knows what she's doing. A lot of people do this.
Bad for business.
So, I allowed, bad for business.
But they're supporting you.
Well, they're just holding you and supporting you. And so once I went into my analytical brain long enough to say, okay, body, because my body needed some encouragement from the analytical brain. It's like, okay, you're going to be fine. You're going to be okay. Nothing's going to happen. The pool is not so deep that if worst case scenario, you can stand up. It's like, oh, yeah, okay. So once my body was able to feel safe, I was able to just kind of go into it. And she had told me before we started, she said there was a third level to it, which you normally never do with anyone who has not had the experience. And it's called the water dance. The water dance is where she rolls with you. You are both underwater. And your body is rolled, and she uses her body to roll yours. And she's still being aware of your breathing. She's still being aware of where you are in the breath, if your body even tightens a little bit or whatever. But it's called the water dance, and it goes more into a spiritual aspect of healing. So, she had taken me under a few times, and it actually became, I really forgot about my breathing. The breathing just, it's like it went in, it went out. And I knew when I reached the end of that breath, there'd be like a split second of nothing. And then I'd be brought up again. And it wasn't, it was just like, and then she'd have me on the surface. And then all of a sudden, I felt her rolling with me. And I knew that she had begun the water dance. In that moment, I was no longer a person. In that moment, I became a gray whale, newly born. I could feel myself. I could feel my fins. And what I felt was my mother moving me up to the surface so that I could take a breath and then back down into the water. And this went on, I have no idea how long this went on. But it was an amazing, magical point. I could hear the sound of other whales around me. In that moment, my reality was that I was a newborn whale, learning both to breathe and the beauty of the world that I would spend my existence in. Eventually, the dance stopped, and she brought me back to the surface and just moved me around and then sort of brought me out of it. And it was so amazing because when I was young, I used to have a very strong fear of the water. And then at that point, it was like, no, it's, I spent the whole rest of the day feeling the water inside of me, feeling my cells filled with it. I would drink water and it would be like I had never experienced like feeling water going into my body like that, which was awesome and beautiful. My test in Earth was interesting because that was the one I almost tested out of.
Oh, yeah.
I went back up to, I had gone to a mystery school up above Columbia, California. And it was way, way up in there. And I went there with a few friends, two that, we were showing for the first time and another who had attended the school with me. And so we're walking along and I'm thinking, it's like, okay, I know my test in Earth is here. So what is it? Am I going to have to like climb a tree, what? And all I got was, it's okay. You tested in that already. Look down. And I looked down and I saw something that was it was like it was glowing. And it was a beautiful quartz the size of an egg. And it looked like an egg. And yet when the sun hit it, it glowed bright orange. And I thought, wow. And I'd never seen something that just came out of the ground that was basically fully formed. I mean, it was rounded. And it's like, okay, that's it. And that completed my tests in the earth elements. And does that mean that everybody has to go through something like that in order to be able to connect? Absolutely not. I wouldn't even recommend it necessarily. But do you need to be able to quiet yourself enough to step out of your humanity? In fire, I had to become an aspect of the fire. I had to connect with the fire within myself so that I was one with it. The water I became one with. The air I became one with. Apparently the earth I was already one with. We can suspend that which separates us just long enough to be able to hear it, to be able to see it, to be able to sense it, to be able to open the doorway saying, I am a part of all of this. To stand and look into the night sky at the stars, at the universe, and say, I'm a part of that. That's me. We are made of the stuff of stars. That's been proven scientifically. We have within our bodies the same things that are found in the stars. You know, people look and, you know, you see shooting stars and you make a wish. That's a piece of you flying through the universe. It wasn't until my niece met, fell in love with, and married a young man from Ghana that my final test was brought to me. My final test of the elements, so I've still got plenty of other tests, but the test of the stars, the Star Nation. And I wasn't even there for most of it. My nephew came one day we were doing drumming circles. My nephew came, and he was very excited, and, you know, and he, being from another country means that when he gets wired up or upset or excited, he reverts to his language. And so English becomes very difficult for him. And so he came running in, and he looked at me, and he was waving his arms, and I'm like, what? What is it? And he looked, whoosh, boom, for you.
Yay!
And it's like, whoosh, boom, for me? It's like, what is whoosh, boom? Whoosh, boom, whoosh, boom! And it's like, okay. So we sat down, and I got him to calm down. And once he calmed down, he told me that not far from his village, a meteorite had fallen, and it came down, and normally they would come in at an angle. This one came in straight down, and it struck a tree and shattered it into pieces. And, you know, they went to go dig it up, and the local medicine man said, no, wait. And so they waited, and it unburied itself. They went and they found it sitting just at the bottom of the hole. So they held a big gathering because they referred to them as thunderstones. And they said when a thunderstone lands like that, it's meant to work with a medicine man. And so they gather the medicine men and they do a ceremony and they ask Creator and they ask Spirit, who is this meant for? Who is the medicine man who is supposed to carry this? And one of Akeem's brothers worked with one of the medicine men. And he contacted Akeem and he said, your aunt, she must come to Ghana. And he said, why? And he said, because, you know, a thunderstone came. And when we asked Spirit who it belonged to, Spirit said, your aunt. Your Aunt Nini must come. And so, after a couple of years, which, you know, it took that long to kind of organize my life and save up money to go to Ghana, I went to Ghana. And I received my meteorite, which is here. As soon as I touched it, my hands went like this. And it fit perfectly. And I could feel every place that it had been. I could feel the sensation of moving through the universe. Near misses. And a little bright light that was off in the distance. And that light started getting brighter and brighter. And then as it became clear, I saw that it was the earth. And as I felt that sensation, the heat that poured over me as it was entering the atmosphere, and I broke out in a sweat. And you could see the charring marks on it. And I knew in that moment that we were meant to be together. That whatever destiny it had, it came through the galaxy to meet me.
The other thing I find about meteorites is they feel like no rock on Earth. You can feel that it's a UFO.
Yeah. Well, and with him, it's interesting because some people say, wow, it's heavier than I thought it would be. Others say, wow, it's lighter than I thought it would be. Some hold it and feel like a little vibration.
Yeah.
Others hold it and say that, it just seems to not quite be one shape. Almost as if it feels soft or that it's kind of pliable. So each person, you will each have a chance to experience
qualities, yeah.
touching him. And he agreed for a time when he first came into my field. He agreed for a time that others would touch him, and he said, I will tell you when I'm to be touched by no one but you.
Great.
And I thought, okay. And he hasn't told me that yet, so he's still up for it.
Great.
But that is, what lies outside of our world is an aspect of nature. So as you think about what your place in nature is, start with that favorite place. Start with the place where you go when you meditate. Somebody leads you on a guided meditation and says, and you see yourself in some sort of natural setting, where is it that you go? Where do you think of? Where do you automatically get pulled to? What is the element that pulls you most? Maybe it is fire. Maybe, you have a past life in the Hawaiian kahuna tradition. Maybe there was a part of you in one life where, you lived maybe at the base of a volcano. And you see the power and beauty of it. You see land erupting from under the ocean, becoming brand new land as a result of a volcanic eruption. Light and shadow, birth and destruction, and rebirth. It's all in nature. It's all of what we are. Everything exists along a timeline. Everything in nature passes from this life, and yet there is renewal. I think we can all remember Mount St. Helens when that blew. Remember the pictures that they showed? How devastating it was. It was like there was a giant scoop that was just taken out of that mountain. And it was gray. And it looked dead. And yet, if you were to see that, look at the pictures of it now. It's lush and green.
And all the trees look like toothpicks. And all of the little animals that lived underground were the only ones that survived.
Yeah. And it is renewing itself. I mean, the Napa Valley, the reason that we have the wonderful grapes we have is because that was volcanic land. It renews, it restores. Maybe like Corky when the wind blows. And, no matter how tired you are, if you step out and the wind starts blowing your hair and you almost feel it as if it's pushing you to dance with you, when that rejuvenates you. Maybe it's going to the water. Maybe it's going to the ocean. Standing and looking up at a waterfall. Watching it come down.
Or going behind a waterfall.
Or going behind a waterfall. Or going into the ocean and feeling it. You've been in the Gulf of Mexico?
Oh, yes.
How warm it is.
Yes.
You move into the ocean and it almost like it envelopes you.
But the thing with going to the ocean is that I'm in the midst of all of the elements.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a film while I was there because out there's the presence of the blustery wind,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And the waves and the rhythm, the music. And then you're on the earth,
Mm-hmm.
in the water, and you're one with all.
Yeah.
And then the consciousness and the sunrise or the sunset, or the intensity of it in Texas, okay? The fire.
Yeah.
It's like you're just there in the midst of all of the elements.
Yeah. The Druids and the ancient Celts spoke of earth, sea, and sky. In fact, it's one of their oaths, by earth, sea, and sky. Because fire was viewed as something in, the British Isles. In nature, when does fire happen? When sky meets earth. When there's water present, lightning striking something. That is how fire occurs naturally. In many Native American traditions, fire is called grandfather because it is believed to be the first element to truly want to work with us and help us move forward, to bring us light, to bring us warmth, to teach us. So there is sort of a very warm relationship with that.
Well, I think that's true because they ignite, when you have a one-celled amoeba
Mm-hmm.
and it sparks. That's when the cell divides, it's kind of creates an ignition.
Yeah.
So it's very likely that's true.
Yeah, there is that spark. And when we think about, the way that we feel about elements and the natural world and being in a forest, I am very, very fortunate and very tickled to have a cabin that rests on the stump of an old-growth redwood and within the secondary ring. So they built the cabin inside of the secondary ring, so I am quite literally inside the cathedral.
You're surrounded by fairies.
I am surrounded by, I'm in the fairy ring, and it took me months to be able to sleep because it was just so, it's like, okay, this is way more nature than I'm used to. And, a few steps down from where my cabin is the San Lorenzo River. And directly across from the river is a cliff face and a rock cliff face. So it's like stone, this huge wall of stone that reaches up and then surrounded by it. So it took me a while to be able to match that frequency because it was more intense over a prolonged period than I had ever known, but it was still amazing. It was still, I go there and I can breathe. I feel that I can breathe deeper. I feel that if something is weighing on my heart, I can go down and I can put my feet in that river and it just draws it right out of me. I can take a walk among the trees and pick the wild raspberries and the wild blackberries and just be able to be and not be anything. And being a part of nature is simply to be. You don't have to be anything. A squirrel is not worried about, how it appears to other squirrels. It's not worried about...
Just make my butt look fun.
Yeah, it's not worried about its place in the universe. It's not worried about how many nuts it's got stored. It just is a squirrel. And it enjoys being a squirrel. It does its squirrel thing. You let go of the burdens. You let go of the expectations. You let go of the story. And that puts you in that place of nature. Now, coming back to our friends, these stones. Stones are the best teachers for the basics of learning how to connect. Because what they teach better than anything else is stillness. They teach us to be quiet. They teach us to find the tiniest little voice, the tiniest little spark, and not go trying to rush for it, not trying to dig it out, not trying to make it louder, but simply being and letting it grow. So, what we're going to do is, we're going to start over here with Dottie, and tell me about your stone.
Well, the reason I chose my stone is because it looks like it was once used as a tool.
Mm-hmm.
And I get a feeling that this stone was not only used to do some scraping on skins, but it was also used as a projectile. So it has had a marvelous lifetime, and it is very content to be still right now.
Yeah, stones are awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, Dean.
It's really pretty.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Yeah, stones like being considered pretty.
It actually, I pulled out like 3 rocks before I chose this one.
Okay. And that's the one that you have a relationship with. And it's not that they have ego or, oh, I look better than the other stones. They feel what you feel when you think, oh, that's pretty. What is it that you feel inside? What are you projecting? If you're looking at someone and it's like, wow, they're really pretty. Even if you never say it, that person is going to feel that affection, feel that softness, feel that appreciation. And the stones can feel it. Glory, why did you pick your stone?
I don't know. it's got a lot of stuff going on. But I was drawn to it. I guess I'm a bit of a rock reader.
Mm-hmm.
And so as soon as I looked at it, I thought, bear or wolf? And then when I turned it a different way, there was lion.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really kind of resonate with the path of this rock. And it's like, where I read, it's like the inside, because it's kind of like broken.
Mm-hmm.
And then the inside is the spirit of bear and lion and wolf.
Cool.
And when you can turn it a different way, there was an Indian brave in there, or maybe even a medicine man, because he had a headdress.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know, maybe
Cool.
I'm reading too much into it, but I just felt a resonance of that. It's not only like broken there and then it's chipped here, and so I get the sense of it tumbling and tumbling and tumbling. And, yeah.
Cool.
It's kind of neat.
Awesome. Thank you. Chris, why'd you choose your stone?
Well, I remembered that we could take it home,
Mm-hmm.
and that made it an easier selection. The stone I have is perfect for the ceremony that I do, where you're supposed to have a walnut-sized stone that's flat. And here it is. And I don't believe I've ever seen a stone that was naturally tumbled that was so flat.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm marveling at the perfection of it. And I love the utility of it. And there's a lot more going on that I don't know. I wanted to inject the word respect
Cool.
earlier when we were talking about some things.
Mm-hmm.
There's dominion, and then there's
Mm-hmm.
stewardship, and then there's respect. And I just, when I go places, what comes up for me is respect for what I see of what the natural world brings forth.
Cool.
So I'm pretty blown away by this incredibly circular, tumbled, flat rock.
Cool. Thank you. Robin.
Well, I actually saw it as it was going by, and I just immediately saw that one only. But so when the basket came by, I did look at other ones, but I was drawn to this immediately. And first of all, it's warmer than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
It has a heat to it. It's also it's multicolored. I can't tell if it's black or green or pink, or there's multicolors in it. But what's really interesting too is it's very soft around the edges, but there are so many divots and cracks in it that it just feels like there are so many facets of that as well. So I'm looking at this as though something is more a representation of all the divots that we get.
Mm-hmm.
And still it is this beautiful thing, and it's soft, and it makes it more interesting and more complex. It's not one-dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just everywhere I turn it, the light is hitting it differently, and the shadows are hitting it differently, and I'm seeing faces in it, and I'm seeing silhouettes, and it's not just a rock.
Nope.
It's many things, and there's nothing simple about it, and I love that.
Yeah. Simple and complex at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, and yet it is. Stones have no story. They just are. They don't hold any stories, but they witness. Quirky, why'd you choose your stone?
Well, so this is either... It looks like it's folded, so it looks like it might have been in an earthquake or shooting out of a a volcanic situation, but it actually looks like a turtle. And I think, and the world is on the back of the
The
turtle.
great turtle, yes.
Yeah, so it's like, whew, you got a lot of work to do. Or it's a beetle and it will never die.
Ah.
Of course, it's a rock, so it's not going to die anyway. So,
Well, true. Mike, why'd you choose your stone?
Classic igneous rock formation from the California Sierras, well rounded by sedimentary conditions. Geologist, first degree.
And yet that particular one spoke to you.
I like igneous formations that are rounded by sedimentary forces.
Now, I do notice
But
that
it's
we...
California Sierra.
yay, California.
Nice. Now, we do have some comments, so we're going to go over here. Hi, Monica. Being in nature renews my spirit and takes away the depression that I feel when I've been enclosed with all of these gadgets that make our lives easier. Or do they?
That's a good
Where is
one.
the balance? And Monica's place is an ocean and white sands is where I see myself when I meditate.
Oh, nice.
Yes. It's like, hey, Hawaii, that's cool. But,
Not White Sands, New Mexico?
or White Sands, was it White Sands, New Mexico, Monica? So,
Can I share a story?
Yes,
It's not my
absolutely.
story. It's Corky's story.
well, you can.
Yeah,
Is it
because
okay if she says?
Of course.
Alrighty.
We were on the Big Island, and Kailua was, erupted.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a perfectly nice hotel down the way. And Corky went and looked at that. And I said, we can get another room right here, so you can be there. And she didn't sleep all night, because we were at
At the Volcano House.
We were at the Volcano House.
Oh, wow.
And
Yes.
so she stood and watched that volcano, and the next morning, as soon as the sun came up, she had always wished that she could step on land that nobody had ever stepped on before.
Oh, wow.
And I said, this is your chance.
This is your chance.
And
Yeah.
so she got her bottle of water and her tennies, and off she went. She was gone for 8 hours
Wow.
on that volcano. And she stepped in some lava that was just forming and had a complete imprint of just her foot.
When,
You need new tennis shoes?
oh yeah, we went
Yeah.
to the store and just got some
Burnt-
cheap
yeah,
titties.
you burned off,
But
yeah.
but because we would go camping,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd run out into the woods and go, I wonder if anybody stepped here. I wonder if anybody stepped here. I wonder if it's here or here. And I just go, jumping around, going maybe here, maybe here. Yeah.
Have fun.
Yeah.
And so when somebody shares that with you, that's when I said,
Oh man, I
Here we
mean, and it's volcanic.
Yeah, it's powerful. When I was in Costa Rica, one of the places that we went was Arenal. And Arenal is this amazing, beautiful spa that sits at the base of a huge volcano. So you pull into the driveway and you look up, and this immense volcano is up above you and smoking. It's like, really? Here?
That's
Really?
actually a good sign.
Like,
Because it's venting.
Images of Pompeii are going through my head.
The old days, Pompeii.
Yeah, it's like I must have been there because it's like, oh, this seems like a bad idea. Something's telling me this never ends well. But they had pools, and the lower pools there were like 12 pools. The lowest one was the coolest one, and I mean, and it was still like just below body temperature. But then the pools moved up, and they were sort of in this pattern, and they kind of spiraled up to the very top where the water was hot, and I mean hot. And all the water there and the water for the hotel were all heated by the volcano. And it was amazing feeling that water coming down, and it's touching you, and the heat of it, and it is the heat of the mountain itself, of the volcano itself. And it's like, whoa, this is cool. And Arenal is an amazing place. So if you ever go to Costa Rica,
Plus the minerals in there are
oh yeah,
richer for your skin.
oh it was a health spa. It was a
Yeah.
healing spa, and
Has to be.
and that was the first time I ever saw like a bar right in the center of a pool. So it's like, oh my God, you swim to the bar. That's cool. But
I also have one of mine, because I don't know if any of you have ever been in a real sandstorm.
oh yes.
And the sand starts to blow, and all of a sudden that's all you can hear, because it just kind of whines. And the sand comes through your windows, and it comes through your
Nothing
house.
stops the
And
sand.
nothing stops it, and it takes all the paint off of that side of your car.
Yeah.
And when you're there, and when it finally stops, so you find there's a lot of people who went crazy because they couldn't get away from that sound and that energy. And yet for me, it was like, go Mother Earth. This is fantastic, as we're sweeping up all of that microscopic dust that was in that sand.
Where were you? Palmdale?
Lancaster.
Lancaster, yeah. I had a feeling.
Yeah.
And
it's
So-
murky and San
And in
Bernardino.
the sand,
Yeah.
of course, is crystalline.
Yeah, and it's
Whew.
fine, yeah.
It's just, I mean, you never hear usually of a sandstorm except if they're the great sand dune or something.
Oh, yeah.
Being so powerful.
Lancaster, yeah.
Yeah, we ran into a couple of those in Oklahoma.
Oh,
Yeah.
That was fascinating. I mean, and we were in the car, and it hits, and, my parents put us all, the four of us, under a blanket in the back of our 1963 Chevy Impala wagon. Yeah, the Chevy Impala wagon. Pig iron.
it got you around. It was heavy, wasn't it?
Oh, it was, that
Yeah.
sucker was heavy. And, by the time it passed, they pulled the blanket off us. We were covered in sand inside the car.
Yeah.
It had gotten in through every crack and crevice. And when we got out of the car and we looked around, and it was like there were, cars were as if a child had just kind of placed them. Nobody hit anyone. But, when it hit, nobody could see anything. So everybody just kind of pulled where they hoped it was safe and prayed nothing would hit anything. No one hit anyone. But it was, all the cars were placed randomly and all covered in sand. And it was, it was so strange because, here we are under a blanket and, it's like, what's happening? What's going on? And we can hear it roaring around the car. And we could feel the car moving. And like you said, it's a heavy car. And it was moving. And then we get up and it's like, why is our car have sand in it? The windows were up.
Doesn't matter.
But it doesn't matter.
I lived on the 11th story of an apartment building when I was younger, and the sand got into that apartment.
Where?
Yeah.
In Abu Dhabi.
Oh, okay.
In the
I
UAE.
understand.
And we were in we lived in a city with apartment buildings and things like that. I mean, it wasn't a city as it was. It is now. It was like, it was still pretty modest at the time, but we were on the 11th floor and all the windows were closed, and we had windows, and then there was like a really deep windowsill, and then there was a way you could actually close that before you even got into the house, and it was like full of sand in there, and it got on the floor, and we trailed it through the house, and
It's amazing.
It gets everywhere.
We were on the 11th story.
Wow.
Nature finds a way. Nature will always be able to bring itself wherever it chooses to be. Yes.
I have a related story. In 1964, my family traveled in a 1962 station wagon. We
So it was brand new.
drove through Mexico, and when we got to Mazatlan, it was raining. Well, we were there. We were probably there for maybe 4 or 5 days. But on that one particular day, it was really, really raining, and we were out on the coast. And my mother looks down. The ground is washing away into the ocean, which is probably common. But as she's looking down, there's this immense trove of indigenous pottery and figurines and tools. And for the next, 2 hours, we stood there, or didn't stand, but we ran around picking up these hundreds and hundreds of year old things as they were being washed into the ocean. And if you rub them a little bit, they would disintegrate.
Yeah.
And it just sort of this is what eons does. This is the clash of the of the great centuries.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing because we had a pretty good idea what we were looking at, but we were watching it wash out to the sea.
Yeah.
And just running around and trying to pick up what we could.
And you can't stop it. That's
What's going on over there?
what's going on over here.
It looks like an
the
X-ray
screens.
of somebody's back.
Okay.
Yeah, it kinda does.
Screensaver. Come on, you. So, for those of you who are actually watching me on the camera,
Nature finds a way. Looks like
just
a
trying to
picture
get my
of
screensaver.
forest.